Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Sports and Money. I'm Ben Parker. Thank you for joining us today. Hope things are going well for you wherever you may be watching us from. We're talking about the Miami Dolphins today, specifically for the players that they brought in over this past offseason. This doesn't cover everything that they've done, of course, but we're just going to look at four of the highlight players that they've brought in and talk about some of the good things that they've done. Those of you who have watched the previous Miami Dolphins videos, you know we've come down kind of hard on the front office for a couple of the decisions that they've made, but we're going to move past that. The Dolphins have done a few things right this offseason. They have done some things that really seem to make sense both financially and from a football standpoint. We're going to look at those today. Here are the four players that we're going to talk about today. Robert Quinn, they picked him up in a trade from the Rams. Albert Wilson signed through free agency from the Kansas City Chiefs. Josh Sitton, a guard from the Bears, also played for the Packers for years and years. We'll talk about him in a second. And then Danny Amendola, wide receiver that they picked up from the Patriots through free agency as well. Let's move to the Robert Quinn trade first of all. They didn't give up much to get him. It was a fourth-round pick, and it's not even a top 100 draft pick this year. They also swapped sixth-round picks, but basically they got Robert Quinn very cheaply, only a fourth-round draft pick. I really like the pickup of Robert Quinn. I'll tell you why in a second, but let's look at the contract first. He's still got 2 years left on this deal. $11.4 million this year, $12.9 next year. If they decide to let him go at any point, they can do so for almost nothing. The dead cap hit on Robert Quinn this offseason is $1.1 million, meaning if for whatever reason somebody became available that they really wanted to sign, they could, if they wanted to, let Robert Quinn go and save about $10.3 million and take that $1.1 million cap hit. Next offseason, he's got a $12.9 million cap hit. If they decide to let him go next offseason, there is no cap penalty at all. They're not going to change their minds about him during this offseason. They're going to keep him. It's a good trade, and here's why. Not only did you not give up much for him, but Robert Quinn has really performed well over the past few years. He has not performed as well the past 2 or 3 seasons as he did earlier in his career. Having said that, he has shown a very consistent ability to get to the quarterback and to put pressure on the quarterback, and that's in high demand in the NFL, and it's going to stay in high demand as long as the rules are the way they are, favoring offenses and allowing quarterbacks to pass for yardage up and down the field. Anytime you've got anybody, and I don't care if it's an edge linebacker or if it's a defensive tackle who can put pressure up the middle, or if it's edge rusher like a defensive end here with Robert Quinn, anytime you've got anybody who can put pressure on the quarterback, that's a value, that's an asset worth having. And so even the Dolphins are paying a pretty stout cap number to get him. It's not a huge cap number, but it's a stout cap number. It's something to stop and think about. The Miami Dolphins got him for only basically that fourth-round draft pick, and he can get to the quarterback. And I think he'll come back motivated. He was very disappointed to be traded from the Rams. He was really excited to be a part of what was going on there. He was very disappointed to be traded away, so I think he's going to be extremely motivated. He's always had a high motor. He seems to be a really high-quality guy. That's what the Miami Dolphins are trying to do. They're trying to change the culture. They're trying to bring guys in that they feel like they can trust and be very comfortable with and be a good locker room presence. That's what they're trying to do here, and Robert Quinn, I think, certainly fits that bill in every capacity. So I really like this. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. One thing I don't like about this, we'll see what shakes out here in just a second. Now, move down to Josh Sitton. Josh Sitton is not the guard that he used to be. Having said that, he had a tremendous Pro Football Focus score last year. He has had a tremendous career. This is a veteran guy who has been part of the Packers the offensive line for a very long time, part of the Bears last year. This guy knows his way around football, knows his way around the football field. He's a very veteran presence. He will do well here for the Dolphins. He will really help them out. His age is starting to get up there for a football player, so that's something to consider. But I really like this deal. Coming up this next season, he's going to be making $6.5 million. It's not a bad cap hit for a veteran offensive lineman. Veteran offensive linemen, if they're good, if they're average, even tend to bring a pretty hefty cap number. So this is a pretty fair cap number, and it only goes up to $7 million next season. His dead cap hit this season is $8.4 million. That really doesn't matter. You're not going to let him go. He's going to show up ready to play, and he's going to have a good season for the Dolphins. I think you could expect that. If for whatever reason age kicks in on him, and at some point it does for everybody. If at some point you see that, or if there's an injury that kicks in, next off season they can let him go for only $2 million. That'll be the dead cat pit right there, $2 million. That's all it would cost them to let him go if for whatever reason age or injury kicks in and they decide they just don't want to keep him around. But for all intents and purposes, he will be around for 2 seasons, and he's going to produce. He's going to help the offensive line. This is a good thing for the Miami Dolphins to pick up Josh Sitton. It's a very nice pickup for them. Slide it over. Let's look at the wide receivers. Basically what they did, they got 2 wide receivers to fill the loss of Jarvis Landry. They traded Jarvis Landry to the Browns. Jarvis Landry had 4 seasons of basically 100 catches a season, basically 1,000 yards a season. So he was very productive. Neither of these guys is going to fill Jarvis Landry's shoes by themselves. And I'm not trying to slight either one of these players, but neither one of these players is the player that Jarvis Landry was. They don't have to be. They're both very good locker room guys. They're guys who will produce on the football field. Danny Amendola throughout his career has been very good for about 50 to 60 catches when he's healthy. He'll have seasons where he'll miss the entire year. He's had a couple of those, maybe even 3. But when he's healthy, he will catch 50 to 60 passes on the football field. Albert Wilson has not had that consistent playing time, but when he's playing on the football field, his PFF scores are very good, and he will catch 35 to 40 passes a year. So between the 2 of them, they have basically met the production that they lost in Jarvis Landry. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be as good as Jarvis Landry even put together, but more or less you have filled in the production, the number of catches, the number of yardage that Jarvis Landry vacated. You've more or less filled that up with these 2 players, and for about the same amount of money, maybe a little less than you would have had to pay Jarvis Landry. He just signed that contract with the Browns. He's going to average about $15 million a season. So you're going to be paying these 2 guys, Albert Wilson and Danny Amendola, a little bit less money than what you would have been paying Jarvis Landry. So that's a good deal. Both of these guys are solid guys. They're going to produce, they're going to play, they're going to fit in, and they're going to be smart, and they're going to fit in whatever system the Dolphins and Adam Gase want to put together. For Danny Amendola, on the cap number, he's at $6 million both seasons. $6 million both seasons. During this next season, his dead cap hit will be $6 million. After that first season, if you want to let him go, you can. There's no dead cap here for that second season. So whatever happens here, if you decide again, just like with Josh Sitton, if you decide that age or injury has caught up to Danny Amendola after 1 season, you can let him go, and there's no cap hit. So for all 3 of these players, Robert Quinn, Josh Sitton, Danny Amendola, you've got them for the next season. You expect them to produce. There's no reason they won't. But for all 3 of them, the dead cap hit is either 0, 0, or $2 million for all 3 of them. We switch over to the Albert Wilson contract. I'm going to look at that for just a second. His cap number for this season is $5 million. Don't have a problem with that. That's pretty decent for the production that you think you're going to get. The only problem I really have with the Albert Wilson contract, and I said I was going to come back to the Robert Quinn piece here in just a minute, the Albert Wilson deal keeps getting larger as the years go on. He goes from 5 to 8.6 to $11 million. If Albert Wilson gets more playing time and is able to produce at a higher and higher level than he has produced over past years, then he can live up to this cap number that he's earning. The reason I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the Albert Wilson contract is he hasn't necessarily shown these flashes of being worth this kind of cap money. $8.6 million, $11.1 million. You can buy a lot of wide receiver for that kind of number. So the Dolphins really here have put a lot of faith in Albert Wilson to be able to step up his game. Maybe after the first year he gets a chance to fit in. That second year is where they're really looking for him to step up. He's at $8.6 million. They can't let him go because the dead cap hit is $9.6 million. So he's here for 2 seasons. After that, that third year, who knows if he'll stay or not. He'll be making 11.1 in that third season. The dead cap hit of 1.3 during that third season. That's 2020. It would be really easy to let him go, but he's definitely here for 2 years, because during these first 2 seasons you can't let him go for any more than you already got to pay him anyway. So he's locked in. The problem I have with it really here is, if you're locked into keeping Albert Wilson for 2020, if you have to keep him at $8.6 million, the cap is really tight again for the Dolphins next season. It was tight this offseason. It's going to be tight next offseason. Don't forget, even though Ndamukong Suh is gone, you're still paying him $13.1 million against the cap. You've got a lot of cap space already tied up if you're the Miami Dolphins. Now, if paying Albert Wilson the 8.6 means that you have to let Robert Quinn go for $12.9 million, it would basically mean that you kept Robert Quinn for 1 season and gave up a 4th-round draft pick to do that. It's not the worst deal in the world. It's not the best deal in the world. See, because he's going to jump to $12.9 million. So there's a lot to look at there if you're the Miami Dolphins. Basically, overall, these are really good deals. It gives you cap flexibility. Really, nobody's locked in for any more than 2 seasons. These 3 guys, Quinn, Sitton, and Amendola, you could basically let them go, all 3 of them, after 1 season for a total of only $2 million cap hit. The Albert Wilson deal does give you a little bit of pause, because he has not really shown that kind of ability yet in his career. Not saying he can't, but he hasn't really shown that kind of ability yet in his career to merit $8.6 million or especially $11.1 million. He's a solid player. You will see him produce. He will fit into the offense, but we'll see. The idea of being here, probably Amendola is probably gone after 1 season. The Dolphins are hoping that after next season, when he's used to playing with them, that he'll step up and actually be able to earn that entirety of $8.6 million and actually be able to produce heavy numbers closer to what Landry was able to produce during his first 4 seasons. All right, so these are things that the Dolphins are doing. This isn't everything. They've got the draft coming up, of course. They could do some other things as well. They may shuffle some things around, but these were the 4 big players that they brought in during this off season, trying to change the culture, trying to get guys who can still produce while making the culture better. And all 4 of these moves basically are good moves for the Miami Dolphins. Thank you so much for listening with us this time. Have a tremendous day. We'll see you next time on Sports and Money. I'm Ben Parker. Bye.